Where? I only have these four. Oh, okay. They have to.
You will make it.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for having the brilliance for choosing the best session over here. This is going to be a very lively discussion about what everybody has on their mind, about what entrepreneurs need and what investors want. My name is Robert Rubinstein. I'm from the TBLI Group, and our work is, my wife likes to say, we make dreams come true, but we're not in cosmetics. Our work is to change the financial system so it works for all stakeholders. So we have a brilliant panel. Unfortunately, there's a mistake, and someone from the organization will get many demerit points. This gentleman, Kambas, is not listed. So my apologies for that, for the organization. But I do want to thank the organization Impact Hub for putting all of this together, because they don't get much applause, because there's a lot of work behind the scenes. So thank you for doing this. Thank you, Alexis and her team. So let's start. Each person, just briefly, short, introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, what is your big purpose, and what do you think entrepreneurs want and investors need, or vice versa?
Should I start? So the one without the name? No. So my name is Kambis. I'm the head of startup services at the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber, which is the Chamber of Commerce. I've been in this position for 4 years now. But before that, I was a startup founder myself for 10 years in different verticals. And then I moved into venture capital investing and angel investing. So I saw both perspectives as a founder and as an investor. And for 4 years now, I'm responsible for startups at the Chamber of Commerce, meaning I represent all the startup companies here in Austria. My overall goal, for sure, is to push entrepreneurship in Austria, but even beyond. Support people, be a mentor from young to old, so that we have more people with entrepreneurial spirit and activity. Not just founders, but also people within big organizations who can also be entrepreneurial. That's my big goal. And when it comes to impact, what I can tell you, what I'm seeing the younger the founding team gets, the more they put the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, into the business model. That's what they're trying at least to do. The younger they get in terms of like the age. Yeah.
Okay. Correction is now on your name is listed. Magic. Okay. Therese, thank you. Tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and what do you think entrepreneurs need and investors want?
Sure. I'm very happy to be here. I'm Teresa Imre. I am the founder and CEO of Magda. Magda started as an online farmers market in 2018, so quite some time ago already. And now we actually also integrated into being more locally in Vienna. So we opened our first store, the Magda store in the Alserstraße. It was opened last year as a pilot project, and it's working quite well. I must be amazed, and I'm also very happy that our little shift in the business model, so actually also being able to adapt from a very, I would even say very exploding and super actually engaged online shop model while in COVID times. We really had to readapt the business model after COVID, and I'm very happy that we now have an integrated omni-channel approach where we deliver from 220 family farms the products all around from Austria to Vienna basically. And what I would say is that in the DNA of Magda, impact is really deeply rooted and embedded. We're basically trying to build up an alternative food system compared to the big globalized monocultures that we usually have in our food industries, and supporting family farms directly so that we're actually enabling many more than just ourselves. From the perspective what investors want and what founders need, it's challenging to sum that up in a few sentences, but I would say it has changed over the time that I have found Magda. So over the last 6 years, it was quite different. During 2018, when I started, it was quite easy to get money as a startup because the interest rates were low and the inflation was low, and everybody was just trying to push basically new ideas. I think now investors hesitate a little, to be honest, especially looking at business models that might take a bit longer. So basically, very often impact models and social business models are not solely orientated for quick growth. So that's where we really were looking much more towards family offices, people that really look towards long-term investments. And I'm very happy that we found a lot of people now with Magda that are actually not trying to only go for the exit strategy, but really wanting to build up something for the next generations. And I'm quite happy and proud about that. So basically, that's also the other answer, what founders need. I think everybody needs, concerning on the business model and also your basic vision and expectations, different kinds of investors, and finding out what the right investors is for your business model is definitely something quite essential for both sides. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Try to come out a little bit more energy. Silke, tell us a bit about
even
you.
more
No,
energy.
no, no.
That's impossible. Okay, my name is Silke Horak, whatever. I have the luxury of two names. Yes, I'm a German living in the Czech Republic, therefore my Czech name. I founded Tilia Impact Ventures, co-founded in 2018. I think we were one of the first social impact funds in Central and Eastern Europe. I got the idea years before, in 2010 actually. I'm a financial investor, it's my profession, and I attended a huge, I was leading the Venture Capital Association by that time and attending a great conference, private equity in London, and there was this woman, fantastic, Michelle Giddens, you may know her. She founded Bridges Ventures, and she actually introduced the concept of impact investing. I was so fascinated, I said to myself, that's what I want to do in my life. Coming back to the Czech Republic, there was nothing to invest in. So it took a couple of years and many initiatives, accelerator programs for social enterprise and so on before there was some critical mass, and we decided in 2018 to found Tilia Impact Ventures, which was supposed to help social entrepreneurs to come to growing businesses and become financially independent. And the market has changed so much over time. Now we are really, I would call ourselves an impact VC and venture capital fund, because we are now looking only in the startup scene and the tech scene, because technology helps to scale enormously impact. That's what we believe in. And our second fund now, which we launched last year, has a size of 32 million euro. So it's a bit different than our first one. We have investors like the European Investment Fund. Great thanks to them. It wouldn't be possible without them. But we have also institutional investor, a bank invested, and we will talk a little bit about the fundraising, which is a huge challenge. And we are investing in impact startups which have a strong and measurable social or environmental impact. We are looking at areas like a more equitable society, innovation in education, innovation in medtech, and then on the climate side, climate tech, energy innovations, mobility, ag and food tech, and biodiversity. That's about what we are doing, and we are investing at this early stage, at the seed capital stage, amounts between 300,000 and 1.5 million in the first shot, and then we can add on. I think, I mean, it's important. It's about the mission a little bit. We still consider, or we consider ourselves an impact first fund, which means we really look first of all when we screen the projects, its impact criteria. Is there a scalable impact potential, and is it locked into the business model? So because we believe if these locked in models are mostly scalable. So if the business grows, your impact would grow as well. And we always work out with our investee companies, before we even close financial documentation or investment, an impact strategy over years. And we help them really to come to their goals impact-wise. We can discuss it a little bit later. And we set up very specific KPIs for each project with regard to impact. That's what I'm doing. And regarding myself, I mean, have been always so much interested in this concept. I'm also a member of the board of Impact Europe. You may know the Association of the Impact Investors in Europe, and I'm trying to promote in Europe impact investing as well.
Okay, Ryan. That's fine. There are seats over here if you want to sit down, or you can stand the whole time. That's fine.
My name's Ryan. I'm a recovered founder, and these days more on the investment side. I've been working as an impact entrepreneur and investor since 2000, if I look back on it. And these days I have an angel portfolio, mostly in climate tech, mostly in alternative proteins of 25 companies. I work with some of the most amazing funds in the world, like being a resident expert at Tilia. And I think if I were to answer the question kind of in one sentence of what entrepreneurs need and what investors want, what entrepreneurs always say they need is more money, and a lot of times that's true, but I would say what entrepreneurs often need that they're not looking for is experienced entrepreneurs from, who have gone before them, they can bring in as really, really trusted advisors to help them make decisions. And whether they're angel investors, and I think that's a great way to do it with angel investors, or as mentors and that type of thing. But to really, a lot of this stuff has been done before. All of the problems, that you're facing as an entrepreneur have been seen before, and probably by people that you know, and to really kind of bring in that judgment. So I think that's in large supply, especially during downturns of when money's in less supply. There's still good advice and good judgment out there that's available. You just have to ask and know how to ask and who to ask. What investors want is, I think, simpler than you might think. So for me as an investor, what I want to know when I'm looking at an opportunity is, how risky is this? And I'm looking at that in terms of how likely am I to get my money back or lose it all? And then second step, if I think it's likely that I'll get my money back, how much am I going to be able to make on top of that to adjust for that risk, right? And so is it a low risk investment, but a low potential return, or is it going to be a high risk investment and it's going to be binary, but if it works, it's going to return 20 times, So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. What I want also is for a clear path and accountability from the entrepreneur. So if, what drives me crazy is if I go from a quarterly update meeting and the goalposts keep changing, and I say, well, at the investment deck, the plan was to have €1 million of revenue by this time. That doesn't always happen. These kinds of things aren't always reached, but I want the accountability of saying, by today we hope to have €1 million, we're at 600,000 or we're at zero. But then this is our plan for how to fix it, right? So to not put it on the investor, to have to go back to the original documentation and see kind of that the goalposts have changed. And that I had a call about this yesterday and talked to one of my investees, and I said that more than anything, that's going to degrade trust with your investors. Because we know what we're getting ourselves into. We know we're going to lose money on a lot of different things, but it's up to you to be accountable and to present things as they are and not try to kind of, sweep things under the rug.
Okay, thank you.
I actually forgot to comment on this question. But I think Ryan has said the most important thing, it's very similar for VCs. There is maybe one difference, and that's we have investors, we have institutional investors. You invest your own money, so we have to deliver in advance our investment strategy and a very specific idea how to execute on this. So we have much more limitations in terms what we invest in, and it has to fit into this portfolio. And then you have portfolio consideration, and it is something very true in it. I strongly believe in market, and I think every project has its specific and accordingly to their stage where they're in, the source of financing and the type of financing. And not every project is for VC, and it's due to simple mathematics. If you have a portfolio of 20, 25 investments, or let's say a smaller one that makes mathematics simpler, you have normally one or two really the outperformers, and they save the entire portfolio. But you have to assume that a great percentage, because of the riskiness, is going bust. So you have to account for this here. And the point is, so if you go into a project, you have to have the expectation of high returns. And unless that works in terms of mathematics, that you trust the numbers, trust is a very important thing, what you expect from your partners, from your founders. But then you still, make your conservative assumption on the development, where it might go, given all the factors you bring in. You make simply the mathematics, and you have to come up with a certain calculated return, otherwise it doesn't make sense. And that's the limitation we have. So not every project is for VC necessarily. So, and what we want to see apart from this growth, expectation, let's call it, it's a passion. Passion, for me, is always number one. When I see a founder, I want to see this passion, and this kind of mentality entirely, ideally from the entire team. We will do it, This strong conviction, you can do it, we get it done. Whatever it's the challenge, we get it done. That's very important. And then you look at the expertise, of course, and you want to see a product which works. Ideally, a product where, your friends would say, or you would tell your friends, you have to buy it, something like this. And the technology has to work. But we can help a lot also with improving your go-to-market strategy. We have these wonderful experts in our network to give you all the expertise and help you with business strategy, with UX, with marketing, whatever it is. And that's so important what Ryan said. It's not about the financing, it's about smart money.
Now let's address an issue which most people don't address. You two actually put money in, you burn the money, and you give grants and give technical advice. How many of you three tell all these entrepreneurs that I want to start this company, bad idea, you do not have the qualifications to be an entrepreneur because it's not about brilliance, it's about grit? How many times do you tell them?
I say it all the time.
You do?
I say it.
Excellent.
I'm in accelerators, and and I don't always get called back into them. But there are some cases where it's really clear to me that what someone is looking for is like really good quality of life. First of all, like you can work with them, and they want to work. They want really good quality of life. It's sometimes clear that they're not passionate about this opportunity, except that I'll say why this? They said, well, it's a big problem. I said, okay, but there are lots of big problems. So if tomorrow you find a bigger problem, are you going to kind of switch to that? So it's like the passion. You're, as an entrepreneur, you'll go through hell, right? If I look at my burnouts and depressions and stuff like this from the ups and downs from startup life, it's not if you want, whenever someone says to me, I want to be an entrepreneur because I want to be my own boss, I'm like, no. If you want to be in control of your life, get a job where you can call in sick, where you've got, in Europe, 100 weeks vacation a year and stuff like that. And if you don't like it, you can quit, right? And the second you start a company and you take other people's money, you have this like almost moral obligation, but for years to push through this, right? And that is your life. And so, so if I see that somebody, fair enough, right? And like I don't think most people should start companies, but when it's somebody who's like, I'll do this, and then I need to start my financing later because I'm spending 4 weeks on vacation in the summer, and then we're gonna do. I'm like, maybe you shouldn't start a company. It's like you don't have to. There's all kinds of ways to make the difference that you want. It could be a project at a larger company. You could be an entrepreneur at a larger company. You could work in a nonprofit. There's lots of ways to solve important problems without founding a company to do it.
I have a slightly different opinion. I never told anybody you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. Well, and the reason I'm saying this is there are so many different kinds of companies which are all, have their justification. Not everybody is for a VC type of company. That's pretty sure, and there's very few actually. And there are companies which don't even need business angels' money. So the store next door is a company. So and I think that they have all their justification. And I love entrepreneurship, and I think not everybody can do it, and not everybody wants to do it, because that's very important. You have to want it, because if you value independence or if you value your regular paycheck, that's a very different approach. So you have to make your own decision. But I think there's quite a few very different types of company and have all the justification. Not everybody needs money outside of your friends or your family, maybe, to finance this, and maybe not even all the companies needs to grow. So, yeah, what is an entrepreneur? Somebody who loves to do things their own way, and I think there are many people around there. So.
I'll caveat that I'm usually in the context of they're doing pitching and fundraising and stuff.
Okay, so, that's a different.
And I totally agree with you. I mean, we have this idea that every startup should be this venture-backed unicorn and stuff like that. But I mean, it's there are so many great single-person businesses or small businesses that just grow organically over time, and I feel like that is left out of the conversation a lot. I mean, it's not venture backable, but there are amazing companies like that, and people don't a lot of times don't target that kind of thing, right? They're looking at the VC thing. So sorry for all the error.
Yeah, completely right. One small sentence just to give to a quantification of this, what you said. We have seen since our launch like 500 companies in our pipeline, which are relevant companies, let's say, pitch decks, and we invested in 3.
Thomas, do you tell companies that idea?
Yeah, that's very interesting. A great question. Why? Because in my position, it's a bit different, because you have to understand how our organization works. It's in the end a political organization, and it's actually the companies, the members, are actually part of the Chamber of Commerce who also fund the Chamber of Commerce. So how do you tell someone who funds you, actually, this idea is not great, it doesn't work? So yeah, that's true. But the thing is, because I've been a founder myself, an investor, I know it's very important to get clear, direct, and authentic feedback. So how are you going to tell someone that might not be the right path? Try it this way. So I think the way you give feedback is very important. My goal is always not to demotivate someone, to tell them, oh, don't do this, no one needs this, and so on, but to give alternative directions or solution. This is something I'm always struggling with, and it's not so easy. But I want to say or add to something what Silke said. Silke, yeah? So sometimes you meet someone, he pitches you something, he or she, and you give feedback based on your own experiences, on your own understanding. But something that I have understood in the last years, that you cannot be never sure. I have seen teams that start with great potential and they fail, and I've seen teams that start, or also founders, or sole-time founder or one founder, with maybe not such a great potential, but they developed into it and progressed into it. So for me, I have this understanding that actually you cannot be never sure, and you actually, in the end, you don't know anything. That's something I've learned. Even if you take your own experience and if you take the data, there's always some kind of potential. That's something I just wanted to add, because often I see, see people, see investors and so on give very direct feedback, which is good, but they tend to demotivate the team, which is not good in the end, I think. And for us, as a Chamber of Commerce, it's even more important, to how to give feedback. Don't demotivate them, but give them a clearer direction where to head to. That's something I just wanted to mention as well.
Vinod Khosla, the founder of Sun Microsystems, recently said that 90% of investors, PE funds, venture capitalists, bring no value at all to an entrepreneur, and 70% actually do harm. Do you tell fund managers, actually, you should not be a fund manager? Bad idea?
Well, not fund managers, but of course there was different phases also in Magda when we had around, I think the maximum number was 14 people that were invested. So from really friends and family basically to small business angels, and then we were growing into our first seed round. So very diverse. And to be honest, that has been the most challenging time, really to fulfill expectations of 14 very different groups. So for me, that has been a phase where I definitely thought, at least quite often, you shouldn't be an investor for certain people that were, you know, on the one hand, pushing too much towards something maybe that the person wanted but was never discussed or pitched, and on the other hand, maybe being sometimes too scary or wanting very often so much feedback that actually you were only being busy with giving feedback to the different investors as a founder. So it has been challenging for me as well. And I was very happy that one of our then now basically lead investors decided to buy out mostly the small investors, and we're now only having 3 people that I'm talking to, and that really helps me a lot. We were also trying to manage that in between forming a board. So basically all those 14 members were basically deciding on 5 of them that were meeting up with me on a quarterly basis, and that was already getting better. But I was also amazed, even those 5 people, how different directions they were actually wanting to talk about with me. And it was very often about just giving input and brainstorming, and to be honest, that wasn't so helpful for me. So what really helps me now is to get rather to spar my ideas and not always being able, having to basically answer on brainstormings of other people. That has been quite, I don't know, for me, maybe also it depends on the different like personality you have. I definitely want to be always on a good trust and relationship basis. So I was always replying immediately whenever somebody wrote. So for me, actually, that has also been a personal growth aspect, and saying sometimes also no to certain things when it's not the right timing, or when you really think we really need to focus on something more. So often I was told that investors tell the founders to focus more and focus on really one thing that you're heading forward. Now I sometimes even talk to the investors like that.
It never goes according to plan. It's always worse or better. If it's better, Donald Trump is a good investor in your company. You know, you give him the money and that's fine. But when it goes worse, how the investor responds, do we throw Teresa under the bus? Because you got to get rid of Teresa. She's the problem. Idea is good, but she's not going to be able to execute. How do you deal with those situations, Silke?
When it's not going good, in very different ways. I mean, we mostly try to help the company. I have to say the company, which doesn't mean necessarily the founder. We had also one of these cases where we realized that the founder was not in the best place anymore as the CEO of the company. So if it starts to do harm or not, you know, developing the company in the right direction, for whatever reason, then you have to talk to them, you know. So, and we found a good understanding, and we replaced him, but he's still, of course, part of the company. So that's one aspect. On the other side, a more typical case recently, unfortunately, when they're getting in problems in fundraising. We have a long list of investors we are cooperating with, mostly, of course, other funds, but also downstream, also the business angels. So I think that's most. Of course, you talk about strategy and all, how you can help, you can adapt the situation, whatever is relevant. But mostly it's about financing. Let's face it. So I think here I would say is still the highest value in these difficult situations, to bring even in more difficult situations investors in. And now with our second fund, we can do follow-on investments, which we were not able in our first fund. So I think that's about it. Talking about problems based on trust in difficult situations, especially most important is trust and transparency. And it can be somehow painful for the founder, but you know, it's always about supporting the company, what's best for the company. And I think we can really help because we have a completely different network than every single founder. And that's it, I guess.
And Ryan?
Can I answer the question about Vinod Khosla? So Vinod Khosla, it's been a long time since he founded Sun Microsystems, and now he's a fund manager, right, of Khosla Ventures. And my experience being on the other side of the table, I've only been involved with, like, I've never worked for a fund, but I've been on the funding end of a fund. In between 2006 and 2010, I ran a biogas company in North America. And my experience was that, and we had a really bad experience with this private equity company as our funders. And if I look back on it, there were a number of reasons. I mean, one is that they lost $1 billion in one day in 2008, and we were their last investment. So that's not, setting things up for greatness. But the people who are working on us as a project were analysts who came from, JP Morgan before, whatever, into this, and had no entrepreneurial experience, right? Had never worked in a startup, had nothing like this. And so, they were really good at running the Excel models and stuff like that. But one of the things I remember, I was going to close a deal at the largest dairy farm in Wisconsin, 30,000 cows for a biogas plant. And our guys, in New York, gave me the things that they wanted me to run by and that were conditions of the contract. And one of them was that, we want to make sure that our feedstock, which is cow poo, right, from this farm, is stable if we're going to build a $35 million plant. Fine. But I kind of looked at it and I said, but what you're saying here is, they have to guarantee that they're going to keep this number of head of cattle, and that these parameters around feed and stuff like that. But what you're saying here, if I look at it, is you're saying that in 10 years, we need a guarantee from them that an individual cow, is going to poo as much then as it does now. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, do you want to come with me to have this conversation? Because you were trying to make a 20-year partnership with a cattle farmer, right? With the cattle, basically, dairy farmer. And this for me was the number one kind of moment of you're so far removed, literally on the 30th floor and on 42nd Street in New York, versus what I'm dealing with, standing with rubber boots on this farm. And so for me, the more the experience there is with entrepreneurship and startups within the team, you run the biggest publishing house in the Czech Republic. You're a business person, right? So you understand this stuff, what it is to run a business. But if your team is just analysts who went from JP Morgan to this private equity company and they've never been out there really, then it's going to be a catastrophe.
But most venture firms, PE firms, most of the people who work there never ran a company.
Well, okay, but have they worked in a startup? I mean, that's why the number's 90% probably.
I think we have to distinguish here. When we talk about VC funds, they're also different sizes, of course. But in VC firms, quite often you have entrepreneurs, right? Private equity is a different story. And these numbers, I'm always a bit skeptical. And there's much more proof in the private equity sphere, because but I've seen really in real case, it's over leveraging companies, for example. That's what I love to do because it enhances the returns, of course, and I want to exit in a medium term maximum. So over leveraging can destroy a company because they all die from cash flow issues. So that's I have seen, and there you can prove it because you see the numbers. But in the VC sphere, it's more difficult to judge whose fault was it, if you say they destroyed a company. So, and I think there's much more entrepreneurial knowledge and experience in the VC space than in the private equity.
But there's, because most of our work is raising money, so we have massive network. And I get far more complaints from entrepreneurs about shitty VC and PE firms who have no social skills, that dance with them for 4 months, make out on the couch, but never have sex, and then after 4 months they ghost them. So that is a common complaint. There are also lots of horrible entrepreneurs, and I've met many of them. So why is it that you can't create some type of code of conduct behavior on how to engage with entrepreneurs. If you're raising all this kind of money, and particularly EIF, which is giving a lot of public money, and they have no code of conduct or no system in place to measure or to even see, what about all the companies you rejected? Can I see the one, and why did you reject them? There is no system there.
But who's going to enforce that, right? I mean, this whole industry is enforced by reputation, right? And so if you do that kind of thing, if you screw someone over as a VC, the word gets out, and other VCs know it.
Does it really get out?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
sure.
yes.
You know, the LPs, they still want to pour all their money into tier one funds who might not do a great job. So because they basically can tick their box, we've done this.
They are very reluctant to finance T1 funds, so they look at track record. But it's not about the LPs, but reputation among the founders is very important for a VC. So the founder community and the VC community, they are interconnected, and of course, that's what we often hear, a feedback when founders come to us. We have heard you are great in this or that. Otherwise, they wouldn't come, by the way. But, so you build your reputation. And if you make these kinds of things a horrible experience for them, that spreads in the market. And then that's good. I mean, that's how it should be, There is one other thing, about expectation management. I love about success or good entrepreneurs, not only the passion, but, in a very informal way, quite often they go, And a fund, I'm talking now about the VC, it's different for business angels. You have institutional investors, and there are certain processes you have to go through, and that includes legal work. And that might be a painful experience because, well, it takes some time, and it includes more parties. And I said, my God, why do we need this? It's not about a handshake agreement, because you have to respond to your investors. So in this respect, sometimes it needs some expectation management about the process, and we try to be as efficient as possible. But it's not a 2 days handshake agreement. No VC works anymore like this. Maybe some, but I don't know. We can't do that. So
we seem to have a less extractive approach to how you work with entrepreneurs.
Probably.
Even though I know you a long time, that's the impression you gave me. So you either fooled me or you're honest.
I mean, if we change the title here, and if it's about
there are seats over there if you're tired. Do not stand up.
If it's about defending the finance industry, I wouldn't sign up for the panel.
You're providing grants and technical support. Are you creating a mechanism that
I think you need to use the mic so that I'm used to it.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're providing grants, technical support to startups. Do you have a mechanism to also provide funding for them, equity or debt?
So our startup services, this team was created 3.5, 4 years ago. Why? Because the Chamber of Commerce had the impression that they don't have the enough components actually to cover all the needs startups have, because startups and founding teams of startups, they approach the Chamber of Commerce with different asks, They come prepared with a pitch deck, a business plan, financial plan, and they usually ask for funding, for fundraising. And because of my own experience having fundraised before and being an investor, one of the first things we did is create an more informal investors network where we give them access to. So startups approach us when they say they want to get funding in the pre-seed, seed, wherever stage, and we try to matchmake them somehow because it's something they always ask. But I want to refer to something what you said before. So we're talking about numbers, so put it into numbers. So if you take a look at about the investors, founders interaction in the last couple of months, let's say the last 12 months, and how it developed in all of Europe, it got worse in terms of how they interact with each other overall. Not for all investors, not for all startups, but if you put it into numbers, it was published by Sifted, UK Media House some time ago, you can see the relationship got worse. Why? Think about it. in the last couple of years, we had so much funding, so high valuation, low interest rates, money was there, markets were growing, and then it changed. And now there's a different kind of pressure. So the startups, some of them need more funding, they don't meet the expectation, and that's actually where it shows how strong the relationship between an investor and startup really is. It's very interesting to see. And because, so what I think you said, but is it because of the reputation? Yeah, it's a reputation game, it's important, but in the end usually it's very fast paced. You know, this venture capital ecosystem is very fast paced, and when it's fast paced, you need to scale, you need to grow fast, there's a lot of pressure, and that's where a relationship actually can break down. And I think if we want to have like stronger relationship in the midterm and long term, actually the ecosystem needs to also think and act more mid and long term instead of more fast paced.
There are a lot of pseudo-billionaires and deal packagers pretending to be investors. I'm sure you've met some of them. So what has been your best and worst experience in raising money?
So basically, I think the title works quite well. So this expectation management is definitely my learning from my best and worst raising money experience. So basically, I think the best thing that happened that was very weird, I think I pitched it in front of the TV. You know, there's this show in Austria as well, 2 Minuten mit 2 Millionen, and we didn't do anything over TV because it wasn't really the direction we were looking at. But one of our investors for the future, I think he really sent me a text message after that, telling me how much money he would give to me. We were getting that money within a week on our account, with even having drawn up contracts up until that. So I was super actually not really able to understand what is happening sometimes. So sometimes you were like being behind with the contracts because you were thinking you need to formalize that much more. Something that is quite rare. And I don't even know if that is like a good example, but just saying what is happening out there sometimes. I think other expectations or other situations that happened were investors being very committed, negotiating deals over months actually, and you were setting up legal contracts already. And then there was one guy really pulling up the day before the signing. And it was a round of 6 people that were there, and then suddenly there was only 5. And we were also missing, of course, the ticket money. Another investor was then also quite generous to say that he would actually take the ticket, so we were able to complete the round in total. All things you can't really control, to be honest. I think that is sometimes quite challenging, and I'm also in the middle of closing a round right now, and it is very difficult. Oh yeah, that's true. Nice. No, but I know for the moment now, and I think now, you know, I started with the idea in 2016, so I've rounded up to 8 years of experience in that sector. I know now that I'm not getting, you know, me as a very passionate person. I think I'd tick that box, being passionate as an entrepreneur, and definitely also being able to endure. I think that is that was my breakthrough personally, understanding what is needed on a personal level to really be able to continue that, not just for 1 or 2 years doing sprints, but really running the marathon that could take sometimes, hopefully for decades. So basically, what is happening right now, and that is quite interesting as well, is that sometimes different investors, you know, are in negotiations with you. It's very close. You kind of have the feeling it's going well, but it's breaking off all of a sudden, and you can't control that. So that's what I'm definitely saying for myself. I manage my expectations, not being too, you know, too euphoric about something, but really a deal is done when it's done. And basically, even when the money is transferred, then it's done. I've heard from other actually founders, a very good friend of mine as well. She had a situation where the deal was signed, everything was clear, but the investor just really ghosted her for the next couple of months, and they had to basically, I don't know what it's called in English, but reverse, thank you, for the contract again, even though that everything was settled in front of the notary and so on. And that's situations where you really have to know, celebrate your things when they're really done. I'm not never celebrating anything anymore, because that's also my own, in terms of my expectation management, that's the only thing I can control. I can't control the expectations of the others, or not even their performance or their commitments or something like that, but I can manage myself, and that's the biggest strength that you can actually build up as a founder, I think.
Silke, we've spoken at length about the challenges of raising money in the CEE countries and the perceptions of bad governance, corruption, whatever, from a country that is going to put a convicted felon in the White House. To say that is like beyond belief. So what are the best and worst experience you've had in raising money?
Well, the best experience was one of our first investors also in our first fund, which was a small one, only private investors. And then in the second, and it was even before we closed the deal with the EIF, which is our anchor investor, so a very important one. And I just, said, we trust you, what you're doing, I give you 1 million. Wow. And it was a handshake agreement, because, we had a relationship. It was not an unknown, thing, but, that was my best experience in this respect. Unexpected, so much. And I still have to say the EIF was a good experience. We had a great experience with them because they are very supportive. And again, as I said at the very beginning, we see so much more companies than a single founder. Vice versa, this LP has seen so many VC funds, even in the impact space, before us, and including us. So for us, getting their experience was helpful, I have to say. The worst, the many no's recently, They haven't been unfriendly, but for different reasons. And, of course, if you talk to a large asset owner, recently was attending the Global Impact Summit in London, and there were all the global players, and they say, CE, what it is, why? And then they have a very clear opinion what they want to do. They want to do climate, and that's what I'm hearing all the time, climate only, LPs, which is fine because it's maybe our largest or biggest challenge we have right now, but I'm a committed social investor as well, so we look on both sides of the equation because it's planet and people. And that's also a tendency we see. Nobody wants to see this anymore, even from an LP point of view in the impact space, because it doesn't bring the returns. And that's a promise in the market now, which came from the US, I guess, because that has been there for a long time. Market returns, no compromise for impact, no trade-off. On the contrary, it's a value driver, which is a value driver, but not always financial value. It's also social value. And we have to get it into the equation. But it's not yet in the financial markets. It's not yet there. So it's difficult if you have a more general approach, as we do have as an impact investor, to fundraise today. And of course, all the macroeconomic conditions for VC risk type of investment are not ideal at the moment, so it's difficult.
Sorry, I just lost my. Ryan, you and Canvas are the only ones who don't have to raise money. You're a secret billionaire. You just haven't told yourself. Do you ever tell entrepreneurs, you know what? Don't raise money. Bootstrap it until you cannot go any further. There are many successful stories of MailChimp and Spanx that never raise money. So it's possible to do.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, I think there's this in-between space that we don't talk about a lot. It doesn't make the cover of Sifted, right, or virtual cover, I guess, of Sifted, which is like these just small businesses that are really good. And that, I mean, of course they can grow and they can become a MailChimp, which was also bootstrapped and stuff like that. But there are some really great businesses that we don't celebrate them as much because we're always looking at, like, we use as a proxy that this company is really great because they did a 30 million euro round. And it's like, okay, but I mean, you know, a lot of that can be market conditions. It could be a lot of bullshit. I mean, Sam Bankman-Fried raised a lot of money. Look how that turned out. And there are, you know, some really great companies out there that are doing also great impact. But it's, you know, a few people and they're bootstrapping it. I mean, the last company I ran, I took over from a founder, and we were fully bootstrapped. I have to say also, as an experience it was my favorite experience running a company. I had two other shareholders. You know, we had two other shareholders, and we would do a monthly call and go through things, and everything looks good, and we were profitable. We were the leader in our segment and stuff like that. I mean, that's a really nice place to be. And everyone kept telling us, you know, you should raise money. You should do that, like, because we're moving along, things are going well. You should now try to quadruple it and stuff like that. And we would look at it, and every time we decided, actually, let's just do this and make some money out of this.
We have 5 minutes left. Are there any burning questions that you might... Oh, there's some burning? Is it a really good one?
Better than the last one.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks a lot. First of all, Teresa, you are a role model for the whole Austrian industry. Second, I would like to tell you, they are not failing, they are learning. I think in Austria we have a big problem with being afraid of failing. You cannot fail, you can learn or you can win. And sometimes it's better to learn than to win because sometimes you're just lucky. And a lot of them think they are great geniuses and blah, 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 but they had just luck. But I'm an entrepreneur as well, so I know what we need, but I would like from... Yeah, it was an introduction. You had enough time. Thank you. I would like from you, how did your investment strategy change within the last 2 years because of these fast rising interest rates? I was talking to a director of a big Austrian bank, and he told me his staff never had interest rates, so they didn't know it, and it completely changed. And I would like to know how it changed for you as risk. It's not your money you're spending, but it's your money, but maybe you have the same experience, you don't care, or what changed? That would be interesting. Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions at the back? No? No? Yes.
No? Okay.
Thanks. I'll try and be quick. So yeah, thank you. All really interesting. So I work at the British Red Cross. So I was interested to know, do you think that there's a role for humanitarian actors in Impact VC, for example, as fund managers? And if so, what would investors want to see from them?
As a job?
As
a job or an investment?
yeah, like LPs.
First question was to you, Silke, I think.
I mean, the environment has changed a lot, and it hasn't changed our investment strategy because you can't change your investment strategy. That's also, I think, you know, with a VC fund, you know, once you start a fund and go out for fundraising, you can't change it, or you won't change it because, well, you have to get a clear message to the market what you're going to do. That hasn't changed. But what has changed, of course, is the environment for fundraising, and I spoke about this already. And of course, we have seen a huge change in valuations, which has an effect to us, you know. I mean, I remember 2 years ago we invested in a company, and that was still from our first fund, so we didn't have large tickets. So we were not leading the deal, but it was a great founder, or is still a great founder, and there was such a competition between lead investors, and you know, we were just watching how evaluations went up, and because it's a befriended VC, so we said we will follow them. So valuations, and that was the logic in the market. Well, I mean, if they make at the end of 100 million returns, it doesn't matter if you go in with 12 or 14 million valuation at the entrance. It does matter, you know, we felt that all very soon, it does matter, of course, and that has changed completely. But for us, it's now an advantage because we are now starting our second fund, doing investments at lower valuation level, more realistic, which is a bit more challenging for the founders because I think for every stage, the precondition somehow has changed. What we see now is a lot of more like kind of bridge financing. We are in the seed stage, so to get to Series A, you have to have a clear product market fit. And companies have more difficulties to get there. I don't know, I would reformulate it. Series A investors want to see more proof, they are more cautious, So therefore, a lot of bridge rounds to get there,
Anyone can take the second question about potential for an LP in the humanitarian concept.
I didn't get really the question, to be frank.
LP as an investor in a fund?
Well, main question, do you think there's a role for humanitarian actors in Impact VC, for example, as fund managers, to have an investor fund?
Working for a fund with this background? Or investing in a fund?
For example, a humanitarian organization raise a fund and manage.
I see. I think, if you start a fund, it depends very much. Impact fund, I guess that would be more oriented on the southern part of the world and developing countries in this context. And of course, there is a different market in here. It depends very much which market you are looking at and which kind of projects you want to support. If you have sufficient deal flow and the potential to get LPs on board supporting your strategy, yeah, of course.
We need to wrap up. Any final questions, comments, or how can we help you?
Oh, yes.
Okay, quick.
So if you know about any investors who would love to invest in our fund, yeah, very welcome.
Ryan?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground, and I'll leave it to anyone.
In the audience? You're always looking for deals.
I also have a podcast called Another ClimateTech Podcast. I released a 50-second episode yesterday. Please subscribe, listen to it, like it, review it.
I think just honest recommendations of good people, matchmaking in a way that where you're really getting maybe some introductions and not just some brief recommendations. So I think just really accompanying also funders until something is set, not even the deal, but until at least the meeting is set that you want to introduce. I think that really helps. Sometimes there's so much effort in getting to the right people at the right time. That's definitely somewhere where you can always help any founder where you know somebody that might make a match.
Yeah, if you want to move into the areas of social impact, impact innovation, if you want to found your own company, or if you know someone who wants to do it, just let's connect with me or my colleague. We have some services for you, and I want to support you with getting into working it.
Thank you. Just a nice story about impact investing. There was a large Dutch foundation that had 500 million in assets, and the CEO wanted to start doing impact investing. And he felt, I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm going to start. So they asked his wealth manager, let's start with index funds, something simple. The fund manager said, oh no, you're going to lose a lot of money. We can't do that. So the foundation CEO said, well, okay, I'll go find another wealth manager who can do that. All of a sudden, that wealth manager was happy to do the work. And each year he did a little bit more. He did more in private equity, he did more in grants, he did more things. And he called me after about 5 years and he said, Robert, it's really not that hard to do if you want to do it, but it's really hard to do if you don't want to do it. So make a choice. Thank you.
Yeah.